This video is based on a series of articles that were originally published on GameTyrant. If you'd like to see the original articles, be sure to check out the links below. The Evo series. In 1992, Enix released 4.6 billion year story To Distant Eden, known as Evo Search for Eden to Americans, for the Super Famicom and the Super NES. Search for Eden is the only game in the series to have a release outside of Japan.
Search for Eden is mostly known, irony of ironies, for being an obscure game. Few have played it, and even less own an actual physical copy. I know of this game because one of my elementary school buddies impulsively bought it from a shady pawn shop way back in 2002. Little do we know at the time that he basically got his hands on a crown jewel.
While the first game was a science fiction story with religious and mythological elements to it, Search for Eden goes on to give a faux scientific explanation for the goings-on of the game. The main conflict of evolution's path being thrown off is caused by well-meaning aliens rather than the mischief of Lucifer.
The opening stage shows us how the world of Search for Eden is dog-eat-dog, or should I say jelly-eat-jelly. After this guy gives you some advice, you can respond by chowing him down. The second game in the Evo series isn't really a sequel, and it's not really a remake either. It's more an alternative version, or a reimagining. The Shinka Run was a traditional Japanese RPG. However, Search for Eden is a 2D action game with RPG elements. You eat enemies to obtain Evo points, which are the game's experience points.
Yum, yum. Yum, yum.
Rather than navigating through a complicated DNA matrix, in between combat you use the Evo points to evolve your body parts. Jaws, horns, legs, tail, and so on and so forth. Through this system, you can become a real freak of nature!
That's so cool.
Every time you evolve a body part, your HP is refilled. This can be used as a way to cheese yourself out of tricky situations and near-fatal moments. Dying cuts your Evo points in half upon revival. You really don't want to die and do all that grinding again. So, the refill tactic is a great way of taking advantage of a developer oversight. The physics of Search for Eden are not my favorite. You can move in 4 directions when you're a bird or a fish, but when you're a land animal, it's more like a 2D platformer, and a pretty mediocre one at that. Something about the movement and the physics, it just feels a little bit off, and I think it's a bit more natural when you're a fish or a bird and you're moving around in 4 directions. The platforming sections are just not handled very well in general. I think the biggest issue with the game's physics is that the stun lock is just the absolute worst. Anytime you get hit, ooh, this game makes you feel it. Boss battles can really take a bite out of you.
Yum, yum.
They're usually the hardest parts of the game, at least for me. This is when the HP refill tactic comes in handy. As interesting as the premise of the game is, and as much fun as it can be to make your own creature, you'll find that Search for Eden relies way too much on grinding. Frankly, the World Before Land era hooked me into the game, but the game kind of fell apart for me during the second era, the early Creatures of Land. At this point in the game, many of the levels are only a few screens long, and the only objective is to get from point A to point B. Things get a little bit more obnoxious during the dinosaur era. Dinosaurs are cool, but most of these stages are just simple A to B stages with not a whole lot of interesting stuff going on. This middle section of the game, is kind of a drag. However, the level design becomes a little bit more interesting during the Ice Age and early Mammal eras. You still have to be really careful with where and when and how often you save. You can actually screw and trap yourself if you're not careful. Search for Eden has some of the most cold-blooded moments of any Super NES game. You kill a Yeti and his wife and leave the child parentless. The game forces you to witness the extinction of the dinosaurs after you spent an entire segment of the game getting to know them, and then you interact with their spirits after they're dead. Your character essentially spends billions of years committing genocide of other species, using time travel as a form of safety to avoid catastrophic events. And the game has the audacity to suggest that this is morally just because you have Gaia's blessing. Man, when I play Super Mario World, the game doesn't lay these philosophical conundrums on me. I'm just having a fun time. The big twist of Evo Search for Eden, if you want to even call it that, is that the final boss is a single-celled organism called Bullbox. You see, he's apparently the ringleader of all the opposing animals trying to defeat you, in order to prove that he's the ultimate life form. I don't know, it's a little confusing, the translation is a little bit off. Is the game trying to say that it's morally right for the main character to become the first sentient being because a man is more beautiful than a single-celled organism? Furthermore, how is a single-celled organism able to talk, much less telekinetically command a horde of animals? Don't take that at face value, I'm just dicking around. In any case, the fight is a signature scene of the game, and Bullbox's death rattles still horrify me to this day. Again, much like the first game, Evo Search for Eden is neat because of its premise and its main gimmick. There's a certain degree of excitement to be had using your custom creature as an avatar to travel through the various stages of prehistory. Sure, but the level design really isn't up to par, especially compared to other games of the time, and the middle, second, third of the game is just kind of a drag. Both Evo games use the theory of evolution, religion, and mythology to tell grand-scale speculative fiction stories in the video game medium. There are some big, mature ideas in here that can have you thinking for hours after playing. However, the games are both tedious in their own ways, they're both very expensive, and they're both very obscure. So if you're interested in them, I would suggest approaching them with caution, unless you're ready to dedicate a bunch of hours experimenting, designing your critter. I do want to give the games some props, because I believe if it weren't for the Evo games, we wouldn't get games like Spore, Evolution the Game of Intelligent Life, Seaman, and Sim Life. If you're a fan of the Evo series, please let us know in the comment sections what you like and what you don't like about these games. I want to thank Laura for being our announcer for this video, and Nicholas Bernhard for being our patron. There's a certain degree of history. That's not true.
The game has a game over bad ending when... Oh, am I supposed to read that part? No.
Yeah, the translation can be a little bit weird in a few places. For instance, the first thing that Gaia says to you in the beginning of Chapter 3 is... By the way... Okay, so imagine you haven't seen one of your friends in a while, and the first thing one of them says to you is, by the way. So weird. If you like this video, be sure to click here to check out some other videos by the Software Agents, or just keep the thing playing, whichever one works for you.